I was very excited about this podcast because, I mean, a global business celebrity like Bill Gates. Wow, you don't get Bill Gates, former chairman of Microsoft and the Gates Foundation. Then I found out it's not Bill Gates, it's Bill Cates, the amazing referral coach himself. He's here live in person. Bill, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's a few billion among friends anyway, right?
Exactly. So we're going to talk about referrals and relevance. Today, if this were Sesame Street, this would be the R show, referrals and relevance.
Not the RE. The RE show could include refund and redo and referral and relevance, but not refund.
Exactly. And I'm guessing because you're such a smart, insightful guy, another is going to be replay and re-listen, which is what people will need to do with this episode.
Yeah.
So can I bring up just a quick pet peeve about referrals and the way that I hear about referrals a lot?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So, because I want you to blow this apart and totally unpack this, because I'm sure you hear this from your clients and audiences as well. People say, well, David, I don't do any marketing. I don't need to sell. My business has grown through word of mouth and referral. And when I hear that, I realize that I'm talking to someone who has completely abdicated all of their prospecting and sales and lead generation, because they're kind of sitting by the phone, waiting and hoping for the next referral to come in. Now, I know you have a whole different stance on what referrals and referral marketing really means.
Mm-hmm.
Unpack that for us when someone comes to you and says, oh, Bill, we're great. We get referrals. We've built our business on referrals. And then you start scratching at the surface a little bit or asking some questions, and you realize, oh my gosh, these people are totally a cork floating in the ocean.
Well, it depends. So first of all, we should all be getting referrals without asking for them. That's a barometer of referability that we're doing a great job for clients, customers, and they will talk to other people about us. So that's good. The question I often have for folks who say that is, number one, are you getting enough? Is it enough to create the growth that you want? And sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And then are you getting enough of the right kind? And that's quite often where the rub is. And or are those people turning into new clients? In other words, is there a gap in that process or not? And the truth is, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes people really do a great job with this. And it's possible to create a very successful, robust business that's referral only, and even without asking. Now, those are rare, and I do see it from time to time. In fact, I've interviewed a few of those folks on my podcast because I didn't used to think it was possible, and now I see that it is. So another thing to unwrap there a little bit is the referral process, if you will, being proactive particularly, is a form of prospecting. I think it's a high form of prospecting, yet we're still asking, we're being proactive, we're trying to reach more people that we serve well. Even when people call us and say, hey, my friend George said I should work with you, or anything like that, there's still a little prospecting involved to bring them along. We have to have a relevant message and all that. We can talk about that today. So I wouldn't say that they've necessarily totally abdicated. There's a darn good chance they have, because a lot of folks that say that I'm referral only, yeah, but they're not having the robust success they would really like to have. Right. And then the question is, what else can you do to make not just more referrals, but also more people come to you through other marketing efforts?
Yes. Well, let's go a little bit deeper into that. When someone has that referral mindset that, hey, we're getting referrals, but then you're like, well, wait a minute. Number one, it's not enough to sustain or grow the business. Number two, it's often not the right kind. And number three, sometimes not enough of those are converting into actual clients. Right. Let's diagnose each of those areas a little bit. And then what is the Bill Cates magic to fix each of those three areas?
All right. Well, quantity, if you're not getting the quantity, then good chance it means you're not being proactive enough, right? So it depends on the business a lot. I know I work with a lot of financial advisors and other folks like that, banks, professional services, and the unsolicited referrals, the referrals that will come over the transom, quite often aren't enough. There's activity there, yes. It's a good barometer that you're doing something right. When I talk to people for coaching, that's one of the first questions I ask. I want to see, are they at least up to a level of referability? So if the quantity isn't what they want, then we work on two things. We work on referability. In other words, are there some things you could be doing through the client journey, prospect and client journey, that could create more unsolicited and create folks that are ripe for the asking? And then, is there a way to ask? And there is, of course, without looking like the cheesy referral guy that nobody wants to look like. And that's what people say to me. Say, Bill, I'm sitting on a gold mine. We know we've got a lot of people that are happy. Our net promoter scores are out of the park, but we're not asking. And I don't want to look like the cheesy referral guy.
Yeah.
And they say that. And cheesy or sleazy is what I hear. So those are the two things we're going to work on: the promoting and asking, and are you referable? Now, if it's a quality issue, then that's where we start to have to educate our clients on who we serve the best, for whom we do our best work, our sweet spot. Because, and I think everyone listening can appreciate this, if a prospect isn't right for your business, then you're not right for them. If they're not taking you to where you want to go and helping you do the kind of work you want to do, and that's sometimes where the referral process comes into play, where you're making a shift and you want to focus on a certain target market or take it in a certain direction, and you need to use referrals and introductions to help make that happen. We want to educate people on who we serve the best. And if we do ask, we want to do it with some parameters around it to make sure we're getting the right types of folks. And I would suggest that, generally speaking, most people listening to this you don't want to take on clients that aren't a good match for your business. It's a lose-lose scenario. And so you want to teach people and you want to qualify people. And if they're not right for you, you're not right for them, you shouldn't be doing the work. And you want to have relationships with other people, so those people still get handled. They still get their problem solved, whatever the work it is you do, but maybe it's not you doing it. Maybe there's a little money to be made and some joint work there. Maybe there isn't. They get handled. Everybody's happy. But just because somebody sends someone to you doesn't mean you have to take them on out of sense of obligation if it isn't the right match.
Amen, for sure. I want to dig into financial advisors specifically, because I'm sure you come across this a lot. And maybe it's even with a newer financial advisor, but it could be at any stage of their career. They come to you, they say, Bill, when I started out my career, I was okay at getting folks that had a couple $100,000 in assets to invest. Now I'd like to get to folks that have a couple $1 million of assets to invest. I want bigger cases. I want more high net worth individuals.
Right.
Okay, well, referral strategy. And they go, okay, Bill, my problem is my $100,000 folks probably don't know a lot of $1 million folks. Take us from there, Bill.
Sure. People do tend to refer lateral and down on the economic ladder, whether it's a B2B or a B2C. David, the challenge I would have, obviously, is going to you and saying, David, I was hoping we could identify some folks that you think should be aware of the work I do. I'm looking for people, quite frankly, who are more successful than you. That's a tough one, right? That's a tough one. Now, we probably have some relationships where we can't say exactly that, but we can say, in addition to working with folks like yourself, I'm also working with business owners or this or that. So some of our clients, we can have that conversation, but you're right. Generally speaking, we can't. So that's where target marketing starts to come into play. That's where having a very clear market. Now, if we're talking financial advisors, but these principles really work for anybody. It could be employees in a large company. It could be business owners in a certain industry. For instance, a couple of folks that I've interviewed for my podcast, Adam Shmela, he focuses on optometrists, and his bullseye is optometrists who want to sell their business within 5 years. So they have a lot of money to invest, but there's going to be this cash event within 5 years he's going to help them with as well. Todd McDonald focuses on family-owned, closely held, heavy construction firms. There's a lot of that out of there. Oh gosh, I'm just trying to think. Dennis O'Keefe, Verizon employees who are getting ready to retire. So what happens is you start to focus on the target market. You can start to build a reputation for yourself. You see, most people, financial services or otherwise, get taught how to prospect, right? How to make cold calls, how to ask for referrals, and et cetera, as a form of prospecting. And that's all good. And very few people actually get taught how to market. And that's where you come in, of course, is drawing people to you and building a reputation for yourself and being known for something. And so that's usually what has to happen when you want to start to move up scale, if you will. And you may have a couple of clients that are in that potential target market. So you start there and then you expand from there.
Yeah, no, I love that. Talk a little bit more, 'cause I know you talk about this in both your referral books and in Radical Relevance. And you mentioned it just a few minutes ago. You got to be more referable. You have a referability problem. Paint the picture of what a referability problem is, and what are 2 or 3 things we can do to increase our referability?
Well, I guess the sign of a problem is you're not getting any. And when you ask, you don't get any either. Yeah, I'll think about it and get back to you. So how do we become referable? What does that look like? Well, here's what we need to do to become referable. And there's degrees of this, and everybody's doing this probably to some degree. We want to get better at it. We have to make 2 types of connections with prospects and early clients, and then throughout the relationship. We've got to create a value connection, which means people like the questions we ask. They like the things we teach. They like our responsive service. They like the problems we solve, all of that value connection. And then we've got to make a bit of a personal connection. They have to like us, trust us. And if they like us, trust us, but they don't see our value, they're not going to do business with us probably. They're certainly not going to give us referrals, and vice versa, right? So they both have to be there at all times, from the minute we meet someone throughout the entire relationship. So what we want to do is, as we stay in touch with prospects and clients, we keep thinking, top of mind awareness, how to keep adding value to this. What can I teach? What can I educate? What can I add to the service? Whatever. And then how do we create the business friendship? The secret sauce to advocates is the quote unquote business friendship. Now, by business friendship, I don't necessarily mean going out late at night, drinking, telling each other deep, dark secrets. I mean, you may do that if you want, but it's really just a relationship that goes beyond the surface and the core work that you do. And most people know what I'm talking about because they have those things already. But that's where the things like client appreciation events start to come into play, little personalized gifts to clients, being aware of their family members and what they're up to and responding and staying in touch around that sort of thing. We know we're starting to build a business friendship if they start to invite us to some of their events, like a wedding, a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, confirmation, backyard barbecue, right? That's a sign. Now, if you're doing stuff long distance, you might not get that, but I think you get the idea. So we've got to keep doing that. And that's what enhances the referability of ourselves and our value.
Super, super important, kind of melding the personal with the professional.
Yes. Yes.
Now, this may not be so much the case with financial advisors, but I know it's the case with consultants and coaches and other sorts of experts. Mm-hmm. Net promoter score, right? Would you recommend us, 9, 10, etc.? Mm-hmm. Are you happy with your results? Oh, the results are fantastic. Love the results. Results are amazing. Time to ask for a referral. And that they either say this explicitly or you pick it up in their response. I don't want to let people know that I'm using outside help. I don't want to let people know that my success I did not create on my own. I don't want to let people know that I have a secret weapon here hiding in the closet. Now that's an ego thing from your client. Is there a comeback to that? Is there a logical kind of breakdown of what to say when you hear that? That I don't want people to know that I'm using you. You're amazing.
It doesn't happen much. It really doesn't. Occasionally in a target market, particularly on a B2B situation, there may be some people they don't want you to work with. They don't, I'll introduce you to him and to her, but he's a really tight competitor, so we're not going to do that. Look, business owners belong to industry associations. They share their secrets with other people. And there may be some people where they are careful. But you rarely hear, I don't want anyone else to know about you. Occasionally you'll hear, well, if I send other people to you, are you still going to have time for me? And that can be a legitimate concern for some folks. And you want to address that and you want to be ready. And of course, I mean, the answer should be, of course, I will have time for you. And in fact, when people introduce me to others, I kind of run a little faster, jump a little higher for those folks, right? And we never take people on that aren't a good match for the business, and I never take on more than I can handle. So there's lots of things that one could do to address that. On the B to C, business to consumer, like an advisor or a coach or whatever, it's pretty rare that people don't want to share you with others. When you get talking around certain types of personal issues and money, then sometimes people are a little careful, a little more reluctant. So it can come up, but that's the exception rather than the norm.
Gotcha. Let's talk about the two macro level, two different kinds of referrals or two different sources.
All right.
When people hear referral, they will sometimes think, well, I have 80 clients. My 80 clients love me. I'm going to get referrals to other clients from my current clients.
Correct.
Then you have the medical version of referral, where one professional recommends a related, adjacent, but non-competing professional. The dentist refers to this particular orthodontist, or this chiropractor refers people to this holistic medicine person. So basically you're saying, hey, Bill Cates, you've got clients. I've got clients. I think the best person that I could introduce you to is a handful of my clients that need what you do. So talk about the client to client referral versus the professional to professional referral.
There's probably a little less difference than people think. I mean, they're both important. They both have a lot of value. We'll call that centers of influence. I mean, for financial advisors, again, that could be an accountant, an attorney. For other consultants, it could be different types of consultants that work in the same industry that do a different type of work.
Yeah.
So yeah, we definitely should look for those. Ivan Meisner from BNI, the founder of BNI, calls them contact spheres. Every industry has their natural contact spheres. For you and I, could be other speakers, consultants, writers, and I've gotten work from others and they've gotten work from me. So, but here's the common denominator. The common denominator in those two groups is you have to be referable. And while a client has experienced your value firsthand, that center of influence, that other professional maybe hasn't experienced your value firsthand. They know about it. They have a sense of it. If they send somebody to you and they get good feedback from that person, then you're going to become more referable in their eyes, right? So the challenge of why some people don't get a lot of referrals from those professional sources, those centers of influence, is they haven't done the work to become referable in those people's eyes, to lay out their process and to make sure it's clear on the benefits and to stay in touch with those folks. Now, some people say you have to give to get. Well, yes and no. With those folks, it helps to send people to them. Sometimes you have an opportunity to do that. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes they just love it when you take good care of the people they send to you, and that makes them look good. So it doesn't always have to be a reciprocal referral relationship.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. The key is they've got to just feel good about your value. They got to feel good about you. You got to be referable. And sometimes that takes time. It doesn't happen in just one lunch, and then you agree to send each other business and then nothing happens. Well, you haven't done all the work yet.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, let's talk about, I want to get just again, take this to a maybe more specific level. Do you recommend for financial advisors specifically, hey, you should have a real estate agent, you should have an estate attorney, you should have an accountant, you know, anyone that touches their money, you should be in their back pocket. Is that having that related circle of people, is that an important feeder system into your referral strategy?
Yeah, I mean, it's not critical or crucial to your success. I've seen some advisors that do really well with that. In fact, they have a horde of CPAs, attorneys sending them folks, and other people haven't been figured out how to crack that code. And they may or may not get a lot from their clients. And I found other people do the other. So is either one critical to your success? No, but it sure is nice to have both working for you. And that people come to me, it's often they're doing one pretty well, but they're not doing the other. Sometimes they're not doing either particularly well. But yeah, you want to look at all the possibilities. Now, I wouldn't probably use the phrase that you did, you know, hand in their back pocket and all, but nonetheless.
No, I just to be clear, I said you have someone in your back pocket, meaning you have your personal Rolodex, right? You've got your platinum Rolodex.
Gotcha.
It's not you have your hand in their pocket, nor should they have their hand in your pocket, but say, hey, listen, I have an amazing attorney that you need to meet because you have this problem.
I got a guy. I got a gal.
I got a guy.
You want to be, you want to set yourself up as a resource. I don't care what business you're in. You want to set yourself up as someone who knows a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And, you know, if you're ever looking to do anything and you're not quite sure who to contact me first. I may very well know someone who can help you directly, or I may know someone. So that's just the basics of getting to know folks and letting your prospects and clients know that. And of course, you better be good at that and have those things. Heck, I've seen people that walk around with other people's business cards. They have a little book full of business cards, and they're ready to give at all times. So again, your contact spheres, financial advisor, you're right. Real estate agent, mortgage broker, potentially, could be a banker, maybe. Could be, if you're an investment person, could be a property casualty person. Certainly, you know, accountants, tax preparers, different types of attorneys, not just estate planning attorneys, but M&A attorneys and personal injury attorneys and marriage attorneys. So there's a lot of different folks that you want to, over time, create some relationships with.
Right.
Even get together, even create a little mastermind networking group where you all are related to the industry, you know, trust each other so that you're not going to poach each other's business if you overlap in any way.
Yeah.
And then have at it. And it can be I've seen a lot of people do that very successfully.
For sure. Well, let's switch over to relevance. One of the things I heard you say a few minutes ago, with some of the examples of the people that you mentioned, is these people are very narrowly focused. So for example, if I'm a financial advisor, I really do my best work with high net worth divorced women. High net worth divorced women just came into, you know, a lot of money. Maybe when they were married, they were not the money person, right? So the spouse handled the money, and I am your guy. And this is their entire focus is high net worth, recently divorced women. Like, I don't know what to do with all this money. It's like, okay, let's lay out the options. I'm going to educate you. We're going to partner on this. We're going to figure it out together. Is relevant. Well, give us the whole kind of relevance system, and then where does narrowness and specificity play into relevance?
Yeah. Before we do that, can I have the phone numbers of those women? Would that?
Yes, you can. I have a whole binder full of index cards.
Actually, I'm married, so I'm just teasing. There was a time, though.
There was a time.
Yeah. So let's see. Where do we start with relevance? Well, relevance has always been important. It'll always be. The more relevant, the more likely people are going to pay attention to our message. When you talk about target markets, you're talking about what I'll call strategic relevance. It's a decision we make of who's our best target, to whom we're going to, focus. And within that is also the bullseye, who is a right fit client within that target. Yes, you can have more than one target. Yes, you can have more than one bullseye, but you're so narrow that your perceived and real value is higher. So let's take your, divorced women, divorced or widowed. Actually, it's a pretty common. And I've seen not just women, but also men focus on that market as well.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit more of a category than a target market, because there isn't an association of divorced women or association of widowed women.
Let's not forget high net worth. There needs to be an association of high net worth, divorced, good-looking women, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to touch that one. I think I'll just stay, PC here. But
excellent.
Nonetheless, it's still a good market in the sense that that's a category, that's an affinity group.
Yes.
A good target market is more like there's an association. They all work for the same company. They congregate in the same place. With that said, the high net worth, divorced, widow women is kind of an exception, because they will talk to a lot of people. They do know other people. Sometimes retirement communities, sometimes professional associations, you can find a fair number of those folks. So I've seen people, advisors particularly, do very, very well in that space. What happens is, because you focus on that market, if you will, their world better, their concerns, their aspirations, their pains, their joys, a little better than the average generic person would know. And so how you talk to them and the questions you ask show that you know their world better. You demonstrate that knowingness. And this is where this all-important word and concept called empathy comes into play. Empathy is appreciation for understanding someone's situation. And just the premise of marketing is people need to see themselves in your message. How you talk about what you do, the questions you ask, they need to start to see themselves in that message. Not all of themselves and not everything's not like perfect, but it's just enough where they go, this person has a sense of what I'm going through, a sense of what I need. He or she has worked with other people like me. There's that feeling of commonality, which is very important. And that's when you'll start to attract those people. And so the perceived value is higher. And then ultimately the real value is higher too, especially in particular type of niches where you just know the problems that are coming that they don't even know are coming, and you can anticipate those things perhaps.
Yeah. I love what you just said about really the empathetic understanding of their problems. And I think a lot of folks listening in any sort of professional services business, when we think of problems, I think most people's minds go right to the low-level problems. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about low-level problems, you end up with low-level prospects. Talk about elevating, the champagne problems. So if you want those 7-figure plus cases and you're a financial advisor, you're not going to say, hey, are you having trouble putting your kids through college? Are you saving it? No, that's number one, that's taken care of years ago, because they're probably in their 60s, right? So the kids are already graduated college. Number two, that message is ignored. That message is not relevant to that high net worth 65-year-old executive that you're trying to reach. How do we elevate our language to still talk about problems and issues and challenges and hopes and dreams, but the challenges and problems of successful people, higher level people than we might have been marketing to previously?
Yeah, two ways I want to answer that. The first one is, first of all, the market. So just as an example, folks that are at that higher level of income, they're often thinking of the fact they're paying too much in taxes. They're stuck in that no man's land of they're not making enough where they can, they're just living off of capital gains and all that sort of stuff. There's no income tax involved. they're not there, right? It's people like you and me. We get the brunt of this because we don't make enough. We can take all those exceptions, but we make enough where they get too much of our money. So, so it's understanding, that person's situation and talking to them in a way, more tax efficient investments could be. Sometimes protection is often a concern in that they think they have enough protection products in place and they may not, and this is where you also start to get into philanthropy. This is where people have philanthropic interests and they're thinking about legacy. They're not just thinking about getting their kids through college. So let me give you an example. In my podcast, Top Advisor podcast, I'm about to interview a woman who she has built a boutique financial practice where over time she has, peeled off clients who aren't following with her in terms of the type of money that she wants to serve. And she's made a specialty in working with people with $10 million or more who have complex financial scenarios. And she talks about that way. We work with folks that have more complex situations. And I know one advisor used to say, I work with multimillionaires who have complex financial situations. And so it just kind of sends that message, and it'll qualify a little, right? If I'm not a multimillionaire or I don't sense I have complex together, then all right, they're not right for me, right? I'm going to go somewhere else. And all our value proposition needs to do that. We want to attract the people we want to serve and repel the ones we don't want to serve. I know repel is a strong word, but we don't want to attract the wrong people. And we do that all in how we message our values. So you just get in touch with the market and then you know what the problems are. So the other way I want to talk about this is, and it's one of the next to last chapters in my book, Radical Relevance, where there's different types of problems. So think on one axis, there's latent and blatant problems, meaning either they don't know they have the problem or they know they have the problem. In the other axis, there's the aspirational versus critical. Yeah, it's a problem. I know I got it and I'll solve it eventually. I'll get there. Or it's critical, like there's a deadline to get their taxes in, or they're bleeding money, right? Business consultants, you got a client or a prospect that's bleeding money or bleeding employees, which could also be bleeding money.
Yeah.
Or they're just missing opportunities and they're feeling a lot of anxiety around it. So we want to try to position the work that we do in our business based on the sweet spot, which is blatant critical problems. In other words, our prospects know they have the problem and it's critical. They've got to solve it. And when it's blatant and critical, they'll move heaven and earth to fix it. But if it's aspirational, it's like, I'll get to it someday. Doesn't mean we can't build a successful business around that. It's going to be a little tougher. And you're just appealing to the aspirations and not trying to solve the problems. Or if it's latent, they don't know they have the problem, then we got to educate them. We got to point it out to them and show them, here's the cost of doing nothing. Doesn't mean we can't build a business around that. We can. It takes a little more effort. It's more consultative in our sales. But when they know they have the problem and it's critical, then that's the easiest place to be.
Yes, I love that. Blatant and
critical.
Blatant and critical.
They know they have it and they got to fix it.
Very nice. I was going to say blatant and critical. That was my first marriage. I've only been married one time, so that's okay. I really can't say that. And let's talk about overcoming fears, because I know that when people read the Radical Relevance book, you are challenging them and encouraging them to make some big decisions about the direction of their business. What kind of client is a fit? What client is not a fit? What kind of work do you want to do? What kind of work do you no longer want to do? What kind of fee levels are you willing to accept? What kind of fee levels are you no longer willing to accept? People might come to you, so your clients, your audiences, but Bill, I'm going to leave so much money on the table. I'm afraid to make this decision. I'm afraid to put that on my website or put that on my LinkedIn, because then the people who are coming to me now will no longer come to me, and I'm afraid I'm going to lose a lot of deals. How do we address that fear, and what are some rational factual things we can share with these folks that might have that fear as they're listening to us?
Sure. It's common. If I just focus on these folks, I'm going to miss all this over here.
Yeah.
Well, if you pick a good profitable target market, yeah, you will miss this, but you're going to be so successful over here, you won't even notice and you won't even care. So the first thing I would do is, seek out someone, whether they're in your business industry or not, who's done it. And if they've picked a good market, I can almost guarantee they'll tell you they wish they had done it 5 years sooner, because everything gets easier. You provide more value, you become more referable. It's easier to figure out who you're trying to serve. You create a reputation for yourself. Ultimately, if you have a kind of a shotgun approach to marketing, to prospecting, it's kind of hard to create a reputation for yourself. It really is.
Yeah.
But when the narrower, the better. And so the mistake that a lot of people make, and a lot of it's out of a fear, a scarcity mentality. When I talk about building my website and my message or my LinkedIn profile or whatever, I don't want to leave these people out. I don't want to leave these. They start to expand the net that they're casting. The problem with that is the messaging gets weaker and weaker and weaker the larger the net you cast. And so if you're going to have more than one target or more than one bullseye, just make sure that you're giving the right message to the right person and not trying to put everybody under the same umbrella or the same net. Sorry, my mixed metaphors. So for example, a way to think about it is your website. Now, you may or may not do this on your website, but I think visually, and websites are visual things, right? So if someone comes to your website, do they see themselves on that front page? Do you have maybe a splitter page that says, if you're, this, click here. If you're this, click here. If you're this, click here. And then once they click, they get the pages that are totally relevant and devoted to them and their critical, blatant problems, etc., rather than trying to have a website or messaging that encompasses everybody. It's difficult to do. It gets weaker for everybody. So I hope that answers the question. And sometimes you may not want to put all your eggs in that one target market basket yet until you know it's viable. I get that. All right, this looks like a good target market for me. Let's start to play in that arena. We got a few clients who can make some introductions for me. Let's play it out a little bit before we start to focus on that. That certainly makes a lot of sense. But once it gets going, you'll see that it starts to take on a life of its own because you're starting to build a reputation for yourself.
Tell us a little bit, how long do you recommend that test period? And when you say, hey, test it out, is that, we're going to revise our website, a little bit of new messaging there, do what you recommend. Maybe there's a splitter page, et cetera, or 3 big buttons. We're going to change our LinkedIn profile. Like you said, get introductions to people. Is that a 30-day thing? Is that a 90-day thing? How long are we testing out this new relevant target market?
It's kind of a hard question to answer because I'm sure it's going to depend a little bit for a lot of people. It depends on the nature of their business, but no, it's probably not a 30, 90-day thing. It's probably 6 months or a year. It just depends on how much activity you're able to create in this new target market to see whether there's a resonance there and see if it makes sense. I mean, you may see you've got something fairly quickly because all of a sudden everybody you're talking to in that market's going, where have you been all my life?
Right.
Or they at least, your message is resonating with them and you realize you got something. So let me give you an example. When I first got started in this crazy business of ours that you and I have been in a long time, I was a little more generic. I was working a little more. I actually owned a book publishing company, so I was working in a lot of printing companies and all that. And I was kind of looking for the target market and looking for where I wanted to go with that. And make a long story short, when I latched onto the referral topic and how I wanted to start to expand that, I started to teach it to folks. And I was introduced to someone who worked for a financial services firm, and it didn't take long. It took about a month or 2 for me to realize, wow, I got a message that resonates with this niche. And so playing with it another 2-3 months, I said, all right, I'm writing the book on this topic. And within a year's time, maybe less, I decided to devote all my outgoing marketing energy to my target market because it was just so obvious that the resonance was there. And it was one of those, like, I'm channeling and it was meant to be kind of things, right? You know, I know that's a little woo-woo, but that's kind of the way it felt because it became so easy.
Yes,
And,
yes, yes,
and
yes.
if you feel like you're pushing a rock up a hill every time you talk to somebody, either what you're saying is the wrong thing or you're talking to the wrong person, or maybe a combination thereof.
And just for people listening, because this is a common misconception, you yourself had not worked as a financial advisor in your career.
That's correct. And I knew I was doing well when people came up to me and said, how long did you sell insurance? Or how long were you in production? Or how long were you an advisor?
Oh, yeah.
I still have people say, when you interviewing me, when you got started in your practice, and that's a compliment because I've gotten to know my world so well. And I've actually become kind of a bit of an advisor for some people, but I do recommend someone else very quickly. But it's a compliment to me that I've immersed myself in that world. And as I've been more successful in my own life, I've experienced virtually everything that any one of their prospects might experience. So I see it from a client perspective as well. But yeah, you don't have to necessarily come from that world initially to become an expert in that world.
Absolutely right. So similar to me, people go, oh, like, I'm sure you have an MBA in marketing. Nope. I'm sure that you've taken a lot of marketing courses in college. Nope. Zero.
You're probably
zero
better off for
background,
not having done that.
other than making a decision 20 years ago that these are my people, these are my problems, this is where I want to set up camp. And you know, Bill, it's funny, as we're talking to more and more guests, this is the norm, that you just made a decision. You never had to work in healthcare to be an amazing healthcare consultant. You never had to work in a law firm to be an amazing law firm consultant. Because you get to know them and you study them, and sometimes you know them better than they know themselves. And you're exactly right when they say, hey, Bill, how long did you run your practice before becoming a speaker and a mentor? It's like, not a day in my life, but I know it better than you do.
And I think you also have to know your limits.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, I had someone approach me for coaching recently. And one of the things he needed to do before he worked with me was to hire a junior associate to take over some of the folks and some of the things. And that's not my expertise. And I introduced him to a coach who can help, and he needs to work with Steve before he works with me. So I need to know my limits, and I'm not going to take on things that I don't believe I can provide great value. And sometimes when I'm in front of a group where they're kind of in my target market, but a little bit different, I say, look, I don't know your world as well as you know your world, and I will never know it as well as you do because I'm not immersed in the day-to-day as you are. And I know my world very well, and I know what works and I know what doesn't work. And together we're gonna have them collide. And I actually have a slide of worlds colliding. We have fun.
Right.
But our worlds are going to collide, and together we're going to figure out what is going to work for you. The principles I teach, I know will work for you. And we're going to see how the strategies and tactics apply to you to make those principles work for you. So yeah, we can really come to almost anyone and serve them in some way. However, narrower is usually better.
Yes. And as we're closing here, I just want to do one quick plug for what you said earlier about sort of segmenting. I know you've got a couple of different websites that we'll share here in a moment, but if people go to referralcoach.com, Bill has done a masterful job. You'll see, you scroll down a little bit and you'll see 3 big, very clear buttons. One says programs for individuals. One says programs for corporations. And the third one says hire Bill Cates to speak. So if it's a meeting planner, they're not confused. They're like, well, wait, he's got online digital learning and licensing. And wait a minute, I just wanted to come and give a keynote. Well, they've clicked on hire Bill Cates to speak. If it's a financial firm, right, they're not going to say, hey, give me $47. No. And it's not going to be come and speak. It's, hey, can we buy industry strength, kind of enterprise level training for our whole team? Yes, you can. So you've done a masterful job in modeling those 3 segments. I mean, it's still you and it's still your thought leadership. It's still your IP, but there's 3 very different distribution methods for it.
Yeah, and some people have that up above in their navigation banner, and that makes sense to do it there too.
Yeah.
Your masthead. But if you just do it there, it could get missed. It may not show up quite the same way.
Right.
So I want to hit people pretty quickly. If you're this, click here. If you're this, click here. If you're this, click there. And then all the messaging. Now, can they poke around and look at the other stuff? Yeah, of course they can.
Right.
But I want to try to direct their movement a little bit. So we pull them into what's relevant for them as quickly as possible.
Exactly. I love that. So I want to point that out, that you're also modeling that message as you're modeling everything that we're talking about today. As we're wrapping up, if folks were to take one big picture idea away from both referrals and relevance, what would you hope that one big takeaway would be?
Wow, that's a big one. Well, I would just make sure that you are so clear on the problems that you solve and the value that you bring, that when you speak it out, people see themselves in it. I actually have, I'm working on this thing. I call it the 1-sentence introduction. And it came from a coaching client who, he called it a tee box introduction. He says, if I'm walking from the cart to the tee box and somebody in the other cart says, "Hey, Bill, what do you do?" I want to have a sentence before I go out onto the box and hit the ball. So if you're a financial professional and you want to attract more right fit clients, then you need to talk to Bill Cates, right? So my market, the benefit, and the call to action in 1 sentence.
Wow, I love that. That's a great structure. Very, very powerful.
Yeah, really simple. So that's it. Just be so clear on who you serve, the problems you solve, and or the aspirations you help them achieve, that they'll think of you and you be known for that.
Totally love that. Well, let's talk about how do people get connected and stay connected to more Bill Cates brilliance. We've got some resources, links, downloads. What can we give people?
Yeah. Well, look, I just wrote a guide on that thing, that 1-sentence thing I just created. You and I didn't talk about this ahead of time, but my email is bill@referralcoach.com. So if you say, "Bill, send me the 1-sentence introduction guide," or the T-box guide, introduction guide, I'll send it to you. So that's one thing, bill@referralcoach.com. I do have another guide you can get without having to interact with me if you don't feel like it. exponentialgrowthguide.com, exponentialgrowthguide.com. And that's a blend of my referral and radical relevance stuff together. If you are a financial professional, or really any kind of professional, will probably benefit from my podcast. It's just topadvisorpodcast.com, topadvisorpodcast.com. And my website's referralcoach.com. And look, all of that stuff I just mentioned, those guides, podcasts, they're all free, but they're also very valuable. So don't confuse free with not valuable.
Amen. Amen times 10. All of those links, by the way, if you're in your car, if you're jogging around the neighborhood, go to thesellingshow.com. All of Bill's links will be in the show notes directly below this episode. Bill Cates, you're a mensch, you're a rock star, you're a mentor to me and to many others. I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you too, David. Thank you.